Shalom all. Ariel Bar Tzadok here from the KosherTorah School of KosherTorah.com. Welcome, Shavua Tov. It is Saturday night after Shabbat, for those who are not paying attention. 11 o'clock here in the Eastern time zone in the United States. I have to mention that because in the previous class that we did on a Saturday night, apparently, somebody thought that we had done our class on the Shabbat itself. And I commented to the individual and I said, you didn't hear that I began the class Shavua Tov, which means a good week, which is the way that we signify that the Sabbath has ended. So, for the record, so as not to repeat any mistakes, just want to make sure everybody knows that it's Saturday night. The good Sabbath has passed l'shalom and peace. And we are now, God be willing, at the beginning of a good week. And now I want to share with you something, a topic, if you will, which is going to be very difficult for a lot of people to have to accept. And that probably makes it all the more important why we have to talk about it. I've entitled this class, How to Fight with God and Win. And I know for many of you, the concept of fighting with God might sound blasphemous, sacrilegious, heretical, but nothing could be further from the truth. Fighting with God is actually a really good thing to do, an important thing to do, a transformational thing to do. And unless you and I do it, we will never, ever experience what it means to truly be a full child of God. Now, I got 1,000,001 thoughts in my head here, and as you know, in my normal live way, I don't believe in preparing classes. You'll never see me here with notes or anything like that. In my private classes, when we teach our students of our school, that's something. Those are regular academic explanatory classes, but this is a chat. And I don't believe in being artificial in a chat. So with me, what you see is what you get, and that's just the way it is. So let's talk about this. What does it mean to fight with God? Number one, to think that you can like put up your dukes and give God a punch in the nose kind of thing, I think that's a little bit too silly, immature for us to really consider. Remember this, even though we refer to God in religion in some anthropomorphic sense, that is entirely symbolic and metaphorical. There is no actual personality or person that we can call God, right? It's the foundation of the Torah faith. If you remember, God has no body, no form, no semblance of form. For lack of a better way of understanding it, the name that we call God, Yud-Ke, Vav-Ke, it's how it's spelled in the Bible, comes from the root of the Hebrew verb hoveh, which means to be. You take the base root of a verb, which is in its passive tense, and you add the prefix yud to it. It turns the passive tense to an active tense. So God's name means active being. And I explain this in a lot of my classes and teachings and books and the like. So God is not a little old man with a white beard sitting on a cloud somewhere, as many people might think. And this is actually one of my strongest critiques with regards to Christianity, where in which they so personified God in the characterization of Yeshu, Jesus, is that they actually think that God is some kind of person, and they try to develop a personal relationship as if with another person. Now, can you have a personal relationship with God? But of course, we all are supposed to. But what does that mean? Oh, where do we say supposed to? Because they're supposed to bond with God. You know, Tema Devakim Bashem, Chaim Kol Tema Yom. So, what is it? Deuteronomy 4:4, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, my point is, when it comes to bonding with God, all right, that's like one of the 613 commandments. It's like really important. How do you bond? All right, we say in the Bible that God's a devouring fire. And the rabbis say, well, how do you bond with God? If bond with the sages who teach the Torah, which is the word of God. Okay, makes sense, but understand what it really means. And especially in the light of what we're going to talk about in our meditative Kabbalistic traditions where we try to expand our consciousness in the Ascent Aliyah school. Well, what are you reaching out to? What do you expect to grasp? You expect to have some kind of visual experience of some big tall guy glowing, maybe sitting on a throne somewhere, and he's going to say to you, my son, my daughter, blah, blah, blah. And like you have a conversation like you're sitting at Starbucks having a cup of coffee. Really? You probably don't have much experience in meditative ascent if that's really what you expect. Remember, Abulafia, when he taught ascent, taught that was supposed to initially visualize an individual and initiate a dialogue of interaction. In modern psychology, we would call the Abulafian technique active imagination, very readily taught in our Jungian school of psychoanalysis. And it does work. But remember, it's a step along a path, like the ladder ascent, sulam. You have rungs. You go from 1, 2, 3, 4, and you got to go up. So you want to, in quote, talk with God, meet with God, share with God, bond with God. Remember, God is the active presence, reality, sentience. When it means to bond with God, it means essentially the universe, the consciousness of existence. In the Chinese tradition, they called it very accurately the Tao. In our Torah tradition, the Tao is what we call halakha, which means the natural way to go. So essentially, if you want to bond with God, you're bonding with the universe, bonding with consciousness, a concept very well known in almost all meditative traditions around the world. Okay? With that being said, how then do you fight God? Again, if your visualization of God is as a human being, a kind of a guy, or gal, the case may be, depending on your preference, then you're going to say, yeah, I'm going to box, I'm going to teach God a lesson. God didn't answer my prayers. I prayed for that Mercedes-Benz, and God didn't give it to me. So let's punch God in the nose. Oh, really? Okay. Let's chill out a bit. No, it doesn't work like that. How do you fight the universe? How do you fight existence itself? What are you going to do? If you don't like the way things are, just how powerful are you to change them? You say you don't like the way politics is today, or the way this religion is, or that religion is, or that group of people and what they're doing and what this and that person's doing. And those people over there, they're wrong because they don't believe like we do. And you see those people over there, they're equally wrong or more so. Look what they're doing. We got to change them. Now, as we very well know, religious violence, a vile and disgusting expression, the worst types of expression, in my opinion, of all human depravity. Don't you dare go pointing a finger at modern-day Islam and condemn them for that which Christians did themselves 1,000 years ago and what Jews themselves did 1,000 years before that. All religious extremism, fundamentalism, that tries to look at things in this narrow little mindset is an evil, disgusting, filthy, filthy, I like that word, perversion of the true Torah way, word, will of God. God's the universe. Are you picking and choosing what belongs in that universe against the way? Doesn't work like that. So you want to fight with God. That doesn't mean that you fight for God, right? We can all agree with the claim, the chant, God is great, right? You can say it in Hebrew, Hashem Gadol. You can say it in Arabic, Allahu Akbar. That does not equal, like an equal sign, like an equation, let's perform violence. Real jihad, as was understood in the Sufi path, was the jihad internal, the fight against yourself. You think this is a foreign concept not discussed in our Torah? How little do you understand our Torah? Who amongst all the great patriarchs lived, performed, and acted the jihad of Torah? I should pause. We're in a live video here. Who? You don't know? How can you not know? Father Jacob, Yaakov Avinu. Don't you remember the famous story when Yaakov Avinu, it says, struggled with an angel? And what does it say about that story? He asked the angel for a blessing, and the angel said to him, you have striven with El, God, and you have succeeded. And therefore changed him from Jacob to Yisrael, which means one who struggles with God and wins. So you see, if you want to think that the struggle with God is blasphemy, heresy, or anything of the kind, well, then you're going to forever remain Jacob. And you will never ascend to that higher consciousness, which our Torah represents by the name Yisrael. You see, Yisrael is the Torah, especially in the Kabbalistic way of understanding, a code name, if you will, to the highest level of transhuman consciousness. Don't think that just being Jacob, which equals the bloodline Jewish people, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob descendants, is all Israel consciousness. Israel consciousness is a higher level of consciousness, which it should only be that all Jews should be able to acquire. Today, I don't think, maybe 1 in a million might have it. All right? The Ariel speaks about this too, but we're not going to get into the details. Israelite consciousness, that's what we call it. Others will call it cosmic consciousness, universal consciousness, divine consciousness. Others will call it Ruach HaKodesh. Others might say it's a semblance, a form of Nevoah. It's exactly what we teach here at our KosherTorah school, in the Ascent Aliyah School of Kabbalah. It's exactly what this is all about. Achieving high consciousness. How do you get there? Well, you can say, I'm going to bow to Hashem. I'm going to submit to the will of God. Well, if you're going to do that, you're not following the path that the Torah has taught us, like Jacob. Jacob put up his dukes. Now, granted, it's a symbolic story. It happened in a dream, a vision of the night. Some will say, yeah, there was a real angel there. Some will say it all happened in a vision. And the word was they were wrestling together. They were really knocking it out, duking it out. All right? Oh, and I have to throw in, because to me, it's so important. Maimonides himself in the Guide to the Perplexed, section 3, chapter 25, for those of you who want to go look it up, states that the wise understand that boxing and wrestling and breathing techniques are very, very important. Fools don't understand it, but the wise do. And you learn, he also says, Misachek B'Kadur, ball play. So Rambam understood the value and importance of martial arts. And as you know, I've been studying martial arts since I was a young man before I was a bar mitzvah, I was a boy, 11 years old. And it is part of my spiritual life to this very day. When I go to the gym and I'm lifting those weights and all that, that's part of my spiritual practice. I don't put those videos to show you, my leg presses and stuff like that because I'm trying to show off. I'm trying to inspire you so that you can recognize I can do it and I'm a nobody. You can do it. We can do it. Because we don't make a distinction between physical and spiritual. It's all the one and the same. It's all the secret of unity. We love and embrace in this world. We love and embrace in the other world. We bring it all together. How do we then fight with God like Jacob did? Well, let me give you a very profound Talmudic story. Doesn't matter if the story is historical or not, because its psychological truths will validate it regardless. Very famous story from the Gemara. This machloket, disagreement between Rabbi Yehoshua and the sages and Rabbi Eliezer. The sages were together in the school and they were talking about the status of a specific type of an oven, whether or not the sages are going to declare it to be kosher or not. Now, let me take a step back and relate a very, very important point. Hashemayim shemayim laHashem, va'aretz natan lebenei adam. The verse in the Bible says that the heavens belong to God, but the earth is given to us. This is our world. We're in control. What does that mean? Isn't God in control? Well, what does the Torah itself say? Lo b'shamayim hi. The Torah is not in heaven that anyone should say, who's going to go up there and tell us? This is a fundamental law. No prophet can ever come along and say the halakha is like this. We say that he's a false prophet. Why? Because God gave us the responsibility of choosing how to live our lives. He says, these are the general guidelines. How you apply it, it's up to you. Do the best with what you got. That's why we have a written Torah and an oral Torah. That's why we have biblical Judaism and we have rabbinical Judaism. We bring heaven down to earth, and we transform the earth, if we so choose, into heaven. And we raise Jacob up to be Israel. Torah is in our hands. We decide what is best for ourselves. That is why in halakha, the natural way, you have all different manners, ways, and expressions. There's no such thing as the right halakha. It all depends what is the with a small case t, not a big one, for the time, space, place, etc. And that is why, for example, you can look at the ultra-Orthodox today, a bunch of extremists as they are, with all of their accoutrements and their weird Eastern European cultural expressions like costumes from 200 years ago in Poland, Russia. To me, that is as weird can get. But that's how they live their lives. I'm allowed to express my opinion. I respect and honor them for who they are, but that ain't me. That's them. That's fine. If that is what they choose for themselves, that is their halakha. Not mine, not ours, not universal. They can go around and say theirs is the only way. Let them say whatever they want. Who cares? Every scholar of halakha knows there's no such thing as one way. You have the Sephardi way, the Ashkenazi way, the Yemenite way, Moroccan, Iraqi, Polish, Russian, German, whatever. We go on and on and on. Doesn't matter. But now understand, because of these subtle nuances and flow in the way of life, halakha must be pliant because our circumstances are all different. Example, if as a rabbi, you come to me and ask me my halachic opinion. Rabbi, what does the law say that I should do under this and that circumstance? The first thing I do is investigate exactly what your circumstances are. I don't open up a book and say, well, the book says this. Who cares what the book says? I care about you. I care about your circumstances. The book's only a general guideline. And I'm going to ask you questions, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I'm going to make a decision applying what's in the book to your specific circumstances in a specific way. That's what we call a psak, right? Decision of law. And now, after you're done, somebody else comes in the room with the exact same question. Their circumstances are different. I know what this book says, but being that their circumstances are different, the psak, or decision of law that I give the second person, may very well be completely different from how it was in the first person. Confusing? No, not at all. Circumstance means everything. Understand this foundation of our Torah. Now, with this in mind, let's go and look at the story from the Gemara with Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua. They're arguing whether or not this oven is kosher. Technically, the oven is kosher. But the sages had a concern. Not so much whether or not the oven was or wasn't kosher. They all agreed it was kosher. But the appearance of the oven looked very similar to something that wasn't kosher. And they were very concerned about the public, and how it could become a stumbling block, how people can misunderstand things. And so the sages made a decision. Even though it technically is kosher, we're not going to allow it. Rabbi Eliezer blew a gasket on this one. He said, no, it has to be kosher. No, it don't. Well, if I am right, he says, I demand supernatural signs to prove it. And all of a sudden, there was a stream outside the school. It started to flow backwards. It was like an earthquake with the walls of the school started to shake. And every time the sages said, we're not interested in these silly signs. Who cares? Finally, a voice from heaven, Rabbi Eliezer called on heaven itself to intervene. And he says, if I'm right, God, tell him like it is. And a voice spoke from heaven and said, why are you guys arguing with Rabbi Eliezer when you know he's right? Rabbi Yoshua, the head of the sages, stood up and in a very polite way said, quoting the Bible, Lo b'shamayim hi. The Torah is not in heaven. Essentially, he told God to shut up and mind his own business and butt out. This is our world, our Torah. We decide, not you. Oh! Everybody was waiting. Thunderbolts come down, crash, boom, burn them in hell, blasphemy, heresy. Later, right, for the rest of the story, one of the sages who was there encountered the famous immortal prophet Eliyahu, Elijah, and asked, says, Elijah, what was God going to do to Rabbi Yoshua and the sages? Good Lord. He told them pretty much to shut up. Eliyahu said, God laughed. And he said, Beni nitzachuni, Beni nitzachuni. My sons have defeated me, he said. My sons have defeated me. Essentially saying, God agreed. Rabbi Yoshua was right. Erich Fromm, the great psychoanalyst, psychologist of the 20th century, wrote a book about Judaism called You Shall Be As Gods. It's a profoundly beautiful, great understanding of Torah and Judaism. If you've never read it, go get it. And he said, this is the quintessential story of the Torah. The Torah is all about freedom. Freedom from Egypt is our essential example, our role model. We have to even have freedom from God, freedom from religion. No, that's not blasphemy and heresy. You know what that means? Freedom to recognize that we don't submit to some phantasaical interpretation of the will of heaven at the expense of one another, to inflict pain and suffering on other human beings. Oh, nay. We put human beings first. And this is the foundation of our Torah. And you'll look at my KosherTorah.com website. Right on top, I write, religion is more about man, including women, than it is about God. And that's the way God wants it to be. Very important motto. Those of you who want to talk halacha, Jewish law, there are two basic compilations of the laws. We call Ben Adam LaMakom, between God and man, and Ben Adam LaChavero, between man and man. And see what the sages say. Mitzvot Ben Adam LaChavero Kayem. The commandments between man and man, they take precedence. It's all about you and me, us. And we want to talk about Tikkun Olam, rectifying the world. You want to talk about worshiping God. Don't you go down bowing, praying, blah, 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 and doing all these external things at the expense of how you treat your fellow human beings. Rabbi Chaim Vital, the great Kabbalist, writes in the foundation, the introduction, of his book about Kabbalistic ascent, the Sha'arei Kedusha. I have all the course material on it. I teach all the prophetic material in Sha'arei Kedusha. I cover the introduction. The courses are available on my website, KosherTorah.com. Go look them up. Take the course. All right? Invest in yourself, please. But he writes there in the introduction, Midot kadmon lamisvot, meaning proper character and behavior is a prerequisite for observing the law, for observing the commandments, for living the Torah way. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? I don't give a flying fluke how religious you are. Remember, everybody thinks this has meaning to it. This is a cultural thing. You see, I take it off, la, 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 la. Yeah, it covers my big bald spot. What can I say? Hold on a second. There we go. Something's popping up on my screen there. My, whatchamacallit, whatever. But anyway, what's going on here? All right. Computers supposedly make life easy. Will you stop that? Stop popping up there. Crazy stuff. Distractions. Love them. But anyway, getting back to business here. The reason why I'm waving around, keep on here, is to show you. Some people think that's like sacrilege. Oh, you have to have it on. No, you don't. Do you know what this is supposed to mean? It's a means to an end. It is just a symbol. We call it pious custom. And if you don't mean, or you don't understand what it means, what the hell are you doing? You have all these religious people dress also religious, right? 100-degree heat, and they dress like they're from Poland in the middle of the winter because they say, I'm religious. And yet they cheat and steal in business, and they act like a bunch of you-know-whats. Look what goes on in Israel. Look what goes on in big cities. Disgusting. The ultimate definition of what we call Chilul Hashem, right? Desecration of God's name. That's not being religious. No. You want to fight with God. You fight. What that means is you don't accept injustice. You don't put religion before other human beings. You put your fist down and you say, yes, I know in the Taoist tradition we believe in Wu Wei, which means allow nature to take its course. I submit myself to God, and I do every single day, right? If you remember, in the Islamic tradition, the whole meaning of Islam means subservience to God. But what does subservience to God mean? It means that you place other human beings first. You take care of their needs before your own. That is true subservience to God, the true definition of Islam, the true definition of our Torah. Building bridges here. Remember that. Okay. Now, fighting God, can't punch God in the face or anything of the kind. Like Jacob. Let's go back to Jacob. Wrestled with his angel. Some traditions will say, well, that angel was Satan, or it was the archangel of Esau. Well, yes and no. I'm going to tell you exactly who that angel was. It was Jacob's own higher self, his guardian angel. And it stood opposed to him, just like sometimes our own higher selves always stands opposed to us. Carl Jung wrote about this in Psychology, where he recognized and realized through years and years of experience that whenever we try to graduate, elevate ourselves in consciousness, we are always barred by irrational fears and violent prejudice. Jacob could not face his brother until he first faced his fear inside. And that fear was personified in the form of the malach, the angel. And that's why symbolically it was called the angel of Esau. But if Jacob looked very closely and clearly into the face of that angel, he would have seen his own face staring back at him. That is why it was his opposition, his Satan, the angel of Esau. And only when he overcame that which served as his own opposition could he transcend the limits of himself to become something greater. And then Jacob became Israel. Every one of us has this opportunity when you understand it and do it properly. It's what it's all about. Abraham, he understood this. Many people turn to the famous story of the sacrifice of Isaac, the Islamic tradition of Ishmael, but it doesn't matter. We call it the Akedah. I've always was troubled with that story personally. I said, how could Abraham be so willing to murder an innocent human being, his son? It reminds me of the similar story in the book of Job, when God is testing Job. And if you remember, then it says that Job's children were just Wiped out like that. Really? Their lives mean nothing? I was always very emotionally troubled with that until I understood the story from reading Rambam and the Moreh Nebuchim. You see, Job is a novel. It was not a historical event. It was a novel. And therefore, we can write in a novel these things in a novelic form. Rambam writes this very clearly. The Gemara even hints to it, so don't go yelling at me if you don't believe it. And with Abraham and Isaac, there is an opinion that the entire sacrifice episode happened in a vision and not in history. That makes sense to me. Because if God were to come to me right now, all right, clear as a bell, no doubt about it that it's God, all right? I don't care if it's for 600,000 people, and he says, I want you to kill your son. My son could be a real blessing, a real challenge. I don't care what God said. I would never do that. And I would wag my finger at God saying, shame on you for even asking such a thing. How dare you? Right? I would question you. Well, I know you're God. I know, but no, not going to do it. You want to strike me down with your lightning bolts? Here I am. Take your best shot. All right? You want to send me to hell? Go for it. What do I care? All right? I tell this to people. I tell this a lot to my Christian friends. My Christian friends say to me, if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to go to hell. And I say to them, something? Let me tell you this. Every day when I wake up, my first prayer is, may today I shine the light of God. May today I do something good. That's what I live to do. So when I die, I stand before the old pearly gates, or wherever the heck I end up. I'm going to say to God, tried to do what was best. Here I am. God's going to say, well, you didn't have the right theology. You weren't the right religion. I'm going to throw you into hell. I said, really? That's what you want? Okay. I'm willing to jump right in, because every day, whether I'm in heaven or in hell, on earth or wherever, I'm going to try to shine the light, and I'm going to try to do what's right. So I'm in hell, and that's where I'm going to go, and that's what I'm going to do. They can't handle that. And I'm so willing even to serve God wherever that. I mean, look at life around us. Look at the world we're living in. It could be very hellish. But anyway, running short on time, so let me get back to the story of Abraham and Isaac here. God says to Abraham, sacrifice your son. In the language of a dream, that would make total sense, where it would not make sense in real life. That's how come I believe, like the opinion, that it was a vision as opposed to history. But the point of it was submission to a higher reality. When Abraham awoke from this vision, he knew and he understood what he saw, what he experienced. And later, we see the exact same thing with Jacob struggling with the angel. Okay, so don't go using the story of Abraham and Isaac as something literal. That's what I got to do for God. I got to be willing to kill for God. No. You got to recognize that even if God were to tell you to kill, your moral righteousness and the divine spirit within you, just like with Rabbi Yeshua, stands up and says to God, no, not going to do it. Because we have that spirit of God, that image of God within us. We know what's right and wrong when we decide to pay attention. And we should never, I think it's disgusting, to try to hide behind the coat or cloak of religion, to try to justify that which is unjustifiable. Even in the Art Scroll commentary to the Talmud, I remember reading one of the introductions to one of the Talmud tractates that discussed the laws of business and money. And the rabbi who wrote the commentary said something very profound. And he said there are two types of people who come to the study of the laws of business. One is the person who says, I want to conduct my business in the light of the will of God so I can do the most honest thing with integrity. But another type comes and says, I want to learn the laws of business so I can know what I can get away with without having to, upset God. Really? Yeah, that's the way a lot of people come to religion. No, we must fight with God. We must fight with religion. We must recognize that this earth belongs to us. We control what happens here, not God. All right? And that is what is most important. You want to bring Mashiach? Stop thinking Mashiach is coming out of the sky on a white horse singing a Mighty Mouse song. Right, here I come to save the day. You want Mashiach? We bring it. Not by building some ridiculous edifice of stone. Not by provoking a World War III by challenging the mosque on the Temple Mount. Ridiculous. These are buildings. Who cares? We change it by changing ourselves. We change it by shining God's light. We change it by living the natural, normal Torah way. We change it by ascending consciousness, expanding consciousness, bonding with the universal cosmic consciousness, and become Israel. And I don't care who you are. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish or not Jewish, like it says in Tana Devei Eliyahu, male or female, Jewish or not Jewish, free or slave. Everybody can receive Ruach HaKodesh. And this Ruach HaKodesh, this divine inspiration, this expanding consciousness, isn't the embrace of a philosophy. It's an experience. It's the development and ascent of your psychic abilities. Yeah, real stuff. And when you have it, you got it. And when you don't, you can fool yourselves. That's about all you'll be doing. Yes, we got to fight with God. Absolutely. Right? We don't take stuff lying down. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. If there are obstacles in the road, you can sit there, oh, please remove the obstacles, please. Or, no, we don't sit there and pray and wait for the obstacles to be removed. We remove them. We make every effort. Remember a very famous verse in Psalm 23? Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. Some people, like we'll quote the rest of the verse, but thou art with me. But I remember an old poster from the 1960s that I always liked, where it stated like this: Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, because I am the meanest SOB in the valley. And I will take matters in my own hand. I will do what's right. I will hold your feet to the fire. And I will take responsibility for myself. And I will demand responsibility from you on every level. That's how we fight with God. We don't take stuff lying down. Remember the wise words of Hillel the sage. Imena nili, nili. If I am not for myself, who will be? We are not victims. And if I'm only for myself, what am I? We're not selfish. And if not now, then when? Grasp the time. Grasp the opportunity. Share the personal stuff about my life, right? Me. When I have an opportunity for something, and I believe it, bam, I go for it. Because that is what I believe is the right thing to do. What about caution? What about taking time? There's a time and a place for that too. How do I know which is which? When you are centered in the center, you can swing to the right, you can swing to the left, and somehow the pendulum swing will always balance you in the middle. And that is where you will know God. In the beauty of the Tiferet of the heart, in the balance of your feet grounded on the earth in Malchut, with your will and your mind touching heaven. And that is how we bring heaven down to earth, and that is how we fight with God, and that is how we extend consciousness to embrace the universe, and Jacob becomes Israel. And I hope and pray that you can handle this, what I'm sharing with you, because it's not just a philosophical concept. It requires of us a lot of effort, a lot of change. Like it says in weightlifting, no pain, no gain. So yeah, you want to go down to the gym, pump the iron, cool and great. But remember, that's also a means to an end. To teach you that you have strength, you have power, you have ability. Use it. That's how we serve God. Check out my courses online. Shadi Kedusha courses. You want to learn meditative techniques and practices. I have a whole bunch of other things in our free library that you can look at for free. And a lot of courses that are of great value to you. The courses that I teach my private students every week. You want to become a supporting member of our school, get in the inner crowd, the inner circle. Doors are open for you. They're welcome. You're welcome. You know how you sign up? You don't do it online. You got to go through the fire. You know what that fire is? Me. You got to call me up. And I get to talk with you. And I get to know you. And we become friends. No, I'm not your holy great rabbi here. I'm your friend. We work, we walk together. I'm Ariel Tzadok from the Kosher Torah School, KosherTorah.com, and I'm welcoming you to walk with me. I'll see you all in our next class. God bless. Good night. Shalom.